Well, thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoyed the movie. Ila and Louise should be joining us on the screen right now to answer some questions. Oh, hi. Yes, everyone can see them. So we'll start it off, and then we'll be asking you to ask your own questions. So obviously, happy to see you both again. I love the movie, and I think it really does capture the essence of the Nishizawa that I know. And what I find fascinating about your films is that you're able to give inanimate objects personalities, and that they become protagonists alongside the people that you depict. From some of your earlier films, like Koolhaas Houselife, where the house sort of seems to play hide and seek with you, and also obviously here it's the temperamental Alfa Romeo Giulia. And I was wondering how you go about giving personality to these objects that you find en route.
First of all, hello, Lucy. Hello, everyone. It's a pity we're not here with you, and we would have loved to be there, as we really like this cinema room. We have incredible memories in this place, and in the Barbican in particular. So we are very pleased to show the film here. And a great thank you also to the Architecture Foundation. It's been a long collaboration since our first film, actually, I think. So it's great to show again the latest one. Regarding your question, yes, I think maybe it's the most difficult thing of making a film about architecture, in general, is to be confronted with walls that don't speak, with inanimate objects, inanimate forms that you have to give life or breathe to in order to recount something. And so that's why from the very start of when we met and started to make films together, we really faced that issue in asking us, but how should we, what solution could we find in order to let architecture speak by itself, and rather than just making nice shots about windows, doors, and walls. And so that's why from the start, we thought that in the architecture representation, the main absent character, or the missing element, the more missing element, was actually the individual, the user, the one that lives architecture, or the one for whom architecture was built and conceived. So that's why at the very beginning we really put on stage and at the very center of the frame the body and the stories of people who live inside spaces of some. Or at the very beginning, we started to deal with the most mediatic architecture, because this was the one where the individual was the most lacking, let's say. And regarding your question, it's how also inanimate objects have a certain place, and in this case, Giulia. I think Giulia was from the start the main character, and Nishizawa-san was so much or has such an intense relationship with his car, that it was obvious from the start that Giulia would be a character in the film as much as he is. And the film was very much less about himself, only himself, but very much about the relation they were having, and how Giulia is also becoming a sort of cinematographic device also for the film itself. It's a moving room, no? It's very interesting for us to on both aspects, because obviously the car with the windows, etc., is in itself a sort of visual device, but at the same time, the size of the car, and this is something he also thought about before picking the right car, is the scale of the car is so small that it was allowing a very intimate setting in order to create or to a setting of this sort of challenge of spending, I don't remember how many hours, but like 10 hours sitting inside the car. So Ryue Nishizawa was very much interested in choosing the car with that quality of space which would allow an intimate relation, and thanks to which the film could come to life, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with its very thin walls and its perpetually open windows, you get the sort of sense of the sensibility of Japanese sensibility of this kind of continuity between the inside and the outside, and you offset against the city. Do you think it would have been? Oh, sorry.
We are also interested in, I would say, differently animated creatures like animals. So we really like a lot to film animals in the space and understanding how they move inside the space, because they have a totally different way to relate themselves to the to architecture in general, but to the space. And also, I think also machines, for example, and automata. We made a fragment on our first film about the automata in the house. And so we always try to find a way to read the space differently, not only with through humans. Yeah, that's mainly with humans, but not only. And also every kind of different relationship that we can have with the space. That's very interesting. Also, we made a film at the Barbican, and we show the film at the Barbican Center. And in the film at the Barbican that we made at Barbican, there's a lot of animals. And there's an incredible amount of animals in the. We even shot a fox in the Barbican. There's a scene with the fox, and also birds, snakes, even snakes. So.
Yeah, I mean, you, I think, see more than most people. Do you observe different things? How do you bring that together in the film itself? Do you have different focuses?
Observation is obviously such a vast topic. It was actually the topic of our course at the AA, where we are colleagues with Lucy, and it's complicated. I mean, it's a very complex topic on how one observes, if he has a very specific methodology, or if it's a certain degree of openness to what surrounds you, and to what also to the unexpected. This is something we try very much to train ourselves on, how you can be or catch the unexpected, to transform the accident into something positive, or to construct out of the unexpected. And this film you've just seen is very much about that, is how, because it's a totally unscripted film, obviously, and so the technique of improvisation, like in music, is like you have more or less sort of tram or a sort of let's say idea of structure, and in this case it's quite easy as it's chronological, so it's a rather easy film to edit afterwards. But the idea is that we had a meeting point, we had an hour, we knew at what time it would start, not exactly at what time it would end, but let's say then the game, or the rules of the game, was really to make something out of that lapse of time we had together. And so it's really, it's not only visual observation, but I think it's a state of minute attention and listening to also psychological states or states of mind, and how, for instance, so through the years and through the various films we've made with mostly individuals, so psychologies, I think we have refined a certain yes, a certain degree of being attentive on how the psychology works. And so we often say that we could create a studio of architectural psychoanalysis, you know, in the sense that this is really the exercise in this film, is how we didn't have a plan of questions or a plan of points we really wanted to discuss, but it's only how you follow someone, or how you build out of what's happening at that precise moment. No, a little bit like how it describes this presence of movement in Japanese culture. No, there is a constant movement, and the climate and the ocean creates, and so all the culture is built around that dynamic of movement. And I think it's a little bit similar to the way we try to be reactive as observers, as you say, is to constantly be in that flux of a movement which is the present time, and how people in front of us react, what they give us, and what at the same time we can build upon that.
I mean, you went to Japan for a 6-month residency, I think. You must have gone expecting something. How different were the movies that you did make? Because I'm not sure if everybody has seen all of them, but there is Moriyama-san, Buto House, and 2 episodes of Omobanis. Not all of them made during that time, but I'm wondering how much deviation there was from the image that you expected to capture on film, and whether you've bookmarked anything that you might want to go back to.
I would say that personally, I was very surprised by the possibility of filming in Japan, because we made many films, but a series of films about cities around the world, 10 films of 1 hour film for every city. And so we know that is in some certain cities and certain countries, it's very complicated to film. And I was really surprised that in Japan, I expected much more problem than what it was, because we really had the opportunity to film people, as I would say in Buto House, for example. We just enter in this house without asking anything, and just starting filming this incredible man that is building his house alone, and we stay for a day with him without knowing him, without knowing anything, and he just accepted us. And this was really a surprise, because even when we stayed for a long time in Japan, we were surprised, but this kind of society that is a society for everything is controlled. They control everything. That there's no improvisation in Japan, and as we make film based totally on improvisation, we were a little bit scared. So how we can do it? But at the end, it was incredibly easy, and they really accepted to be filmed. You see also in this film, Tokyo Ride and Ryue Nishizawa is a really incredible natural, and Moriyama-san also, when we made the film with him, and Oka-san with the Buto House, they incredibly natural. They're very natural. They don't act themselves. So this was a really surprise. And what you.
It's all about cultural confrontation. I think when
I don't know if is it because they don't know how to say no. maybe it's this, because maybe we start filming and they never say no. Maybe they just accept it for that.
I think they said no quite a lot of times during the film, but you continued anyway, and somehow that's like the beauty of this, that you go beyond the politesse, and
okay, so
you're able
know,
to get an intimacy that...
You know very well Japan, so maybe this is the reason you are saying this. You're telling me that I haven't seen the limit, so maybe
exactly.
maybe that's the key. That's the key. Yeah. But maybe it's a great place where to film because they don't say no. Mm-hmm. But I don't think so, because we are so polite and we respect a lot. But maybe it's just smiling. You can be accepted much more than in other countries. But I don't know.
Yeah, but it's true that we spent 6 months in Japan, and it was really such an intensive, let's say, for us, we were under test during these 6 months to understand where those limits were. Actually, it was a constant preoccupation for us to understand how and in which way you relate to someone, which were the codes, because we were constantly under self-criticism or self-questioning about how you should behave, if it was correct to behave this way, etc. Because constantly you feel that you behaved in a wrong way. So at the end of these 6 months, we got a little bit more of confidence and felt the need of also not being too much subject of these limits, but also try to push a little bit in a more Occidental way, in a more intuitive and direct way. But it's very, very complex, I think.
This is very interesting, the topic of the limit related to the culture, because as you know, I'm Italian, and in Italy we have the limits very far, no? So we don't, our limits are really very far. In Japan, they are very, very close. There's so the limit, the idea of the limit, it's you can see it all the time, the limit. So maybe is this in misunderstanding that something happening, but very interesting is happening in the, because in French, for example, the limits are much closer than in Italy, no? So maybe also,
So we had to understand the signs, because for sometimes, these limits are not pronounced.
The codes.
So you have to understand them in such a subtle way. We actually spent most of the time during our stay in Japan in Kyoto. And for instance, someone explained us that in traditional culture, the way you were invited to live in someone's place is when you were brought some specific tea with rice inside. I don't know if you heard that, but if someone proposes you this kind of tea, it's just a sort of hidden code to let you know that it's the moment you have to leave, no?
So, I might have been served it. I just never realized that there was a message inside it. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, you see, your limits are. But I think with humor, we can push the limits, but with humor and irony. And if you do it with the lightness and the humor, you'll be accepted, I think.
I mean, is there anybody that wants to ask a question in the audience? Maybe now is a good time to start. I realize we're a little bit behind time. Oh, there is one there. I think someone's coming over.
Thank you. Sorry, I just had a question. What made you decide to film it in black and white and not color?
In black and white. Let me do something. Something changed or not?
Yes.
Are we in black and white now?
Yeah.
No, I don't see. I still.
Okay,
we are,
okay.
we are. Okay. It's better now. Are we more beautiful now? Because in black and white, everybody is more beautiful. No, this is in fact, it's real. It's true. But we decided we shot the film in colors, obviously, but immediately when we had in mind this idea of making the film in black and white because we had in mind a lot of all the old cinema from the classic era of cinema in Japan by Ozu, Mizoguchi, Kurosawa, and this is the film that we know are in black and white. So the imaginary is what in black and white, but also we thought a lot about the street photography in Japan. That street photography is very important, Japanese street photography. And what is very interesting, for example, Daido Moriyama, that is very known now, but what is very interesting in the photography in Japan, that is that even today, there's a lot of Japanese street photographers, they shoot in black and white. I don't know why, and it's always a black and white, very with a strong contrast, like we put on the film, and so these were the reason for the image in black and white, and also it was related to the architecture of Ryue Nishizawa and Sejima, that is always white, and so everything was entering in this idea of putting black and white. But when we in the editing, we made a test in black and white. We saw Ryue Nishizawa in black and white, and it was obvious to stay in black and white because it's so, I don't know, it's beautiful in black and white, and also the shirt the shirt that he has was perfect in black and white. So, but we are also in black and white now. Is a black and white is coming from the eternity, no? The colors you can understand which in which era has been filmed a film looking at the colors, but black and white is always in the eternity. It stopped the time.
Is there any, does anybody want to follow on that? I mean, oh yes, there is one.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you kind of enjoy the language barrier, because it might give some gap for like improvisation when there's like a difference in meaning or like something like that.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, and probably this film is not the one where the question of the language barrier was the most dominant, because Lucy mentioned other films we shot in Japan and where the language barrier was so heavy and so impossible to break that we really needed to develop another methodology, another kind of approach.
That is stay silent, because we made a film, Buto House, with another one, Okasan, that it doesn't speak a word in English, so the whole film is silent.
Yeah. But for instance, in the series of film Homo Urbanus, where we shot in various countries, and in some countries we really didn't speak the language, so it becomes films that are really visual narratives more than what we've done before. Was very much based on dialogues and how people really express their relation to space, being specific architecture or being a city or a public square or any kind of space. And so in these films, we could relate more to the history of the urban symphonies, for instance, in the history of cinema. These films where it's an editing, the editing becomes the leading part of the narrative, let's say, in associating shots from the streets that create almost a sort of symphonic or musical kind of narrative. And so, yeah, in Japan, even if we took some Japanese lessons, it was pretty hard to create a real language exchange. And so that's why we shifted to this kind of more of the position of the silent observer. Yeah.
But for me, it's interesting, very interesting, the language barrier in the film, in this film, but in all the films, because when you don't speak very well a language and it's not your language, so you have to explain yourself in a language that is not your language, that you maybe even if you don't speak very well, it's very interesting because you will reveal your weakness. So you are more. You become immediately more weak, more human, vulnerable. So it's a kind of vulnerability that you, and I understand very well because I all the languages I speak very bad. So I know what is it. And so and this is something very interesting because I am sure that it will not be the same film if he spoke Japanese. So having to speak English and having some problem, even for Moriyama-san, that it was a film that Moriyama-san really spoke very, very bad English. But in the same time, there's a kind of intimacy that you can create thanks to that, because everything is difficult. You're facing difficulties all the time. And this creates, this kind of vulnerability that creates also a kind of intimacy.
Yeah, and another way of understanding each other, which goes from situation, gestures, body language, things that we share beyond words, let's say.
You can have a very strong, intellectually very strong person that explains himself very, very well and is very clear and very strong in that sense. But when he is switched in another language that he doesn't speak very well, it's another person, and it's totally different. So you can talk with them in a different way, much more intimate.
I just have another question about the storytelling techniques that you use, because obviously when you do film, it's impromptu, it's spontaneous, but there is a certain narrative structure that appears in many of your movies. Are there some kind of rule sets that you come back to? Is it always a different configuration? How do you go about telling that story?
There is a very interesting question, storytelling in cinema, because normally when we think about storytelling in cinema, it's we think about the script, that you have an idea, so you write and you know the techniques that is always the same, the technique to write a script and to keep the attention of the people watching the film. In our case, it's extremely complicated because we film a lot, and when we film, we don't know what kind of film we are making. We are just observing, so we film a lot, and we are really free to film what we are observing. At the end, we have a lot of material, a lot of shooting, and we have to create the film in the editing. But not having a script from the beginning, we have to write the film in the sense of writing different writing, but in a sense we have to write the film, making the editing. So, and this is the way we do this is that normally personally I'm immediately very bored by films. So I try to have all the time something that keep my attention. So this is one of the things very important. But also we try from the beginning. We try from the first film to try to edit the film as a musical composition. So as we like a lot, we love music, and we know a little bit better what is the composition, the structure of a good song more than a good film, because the structure of a good film is so basic, and when you watch a lot of films, at the end you in the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes you have understood everything. There's exceptions, good exceptions. Good exceptions are the good films, and so there's very few good films. But in the music it's different. If you listen to some kind of contemporary music or even classical music, or even if you can even find it in jazz or rock, but the music is much more rich. It's very interesting that the structure of the music composition. So we try that. I don't say that we can do it, but we try to compose our films in a kind of sort of harmony, create a sort of harmony that is not related to the sense or to the content, but is related to the tension that you can create by moments. So in a kind of idea of harmony. So it's really, from the beginning, we wanted to do this. We wanted to be, and this is an opportunity to make films about architecture, because for us, it's a kind of freedom that we couldn't have in the cinema, because no one can understand our films in a cinema production. So no one can put money in our films, because they say, you have to write your script before. So we felt very free to make films in this niche of architecture and space, because we could try to test this kind of new structure. And if you have watched our film, previous film, you will find all the time this kind of music composition that is to say that there's not a story that you follow from the beginning until the end. Yeah, in this case, is the story that is starting in the morning and is finished at the night. But this is not really the structure of the film. But in all other films, it's a kind of composition of little fragments put it together by this idea of musical composition. Sorry?
Yeah, no, just to add something like that, because this very last film is actually quite different in terms of structure. It's very simple, as it follows mostly the chronological, the chronology of the day. But something we have developed over the years in the films is this question of fragmentation, which is very much linked to also the mechanisms of our memory, how we stock memory, how we remember a place, in the sense that the extraordinary mechanics of our brains don't work in a sort of rational and chronological way. We stock memories. And our relation, for instance, let's take an example. You will visit a place, and then the day after, if you remember that place, it will not be a sort of chronological flux of images that follows the pace of your visit. But you will remember that place through a series of, let's call them punctum, like Roland Barthes, the sense that you will have developed certain emotions that are, or intensities in your emotions linked to very specific elements, being a light, being a material, being an angle, being a picture you saw somewhere, etc. And so that our films are very much built on that, in the sense that we try to deconstruct the principle of the unity of a space, because usually let's say, architecture representation very much aims to give an idea of a unity, an idea of the architecture as a whole, let's say, in order to be efficient in terms of communication. And so we try to do exactly the opposite, to deconstruct this idea of entity through a series of little fragments which are linked to very specific emotions, let's say. And so mostly all our films are based on that. And the one in the Barbican in particular way, it's a sort of deconstruction of the place through little portraits and places.
I think we have to wrap up in a minute, but I just wanted to see if there were any other questions just before we finish. No, okay. Well, it's been fascinating to speak to you, and obviously I loved the movie, enjoyed watching it again. And I would recommend that everybody here in the audience see the rest of their Tokyo films, and all the others as well, if you haven't yet.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lucy, and see you, everyone. Thank you. Bye.